This episode of the Topcast is proudly supported by Alfred Music. You're listening to the Topcast, the original podcast for growth-minded instrumental music and voice teachers since 2015, with your host, Tim Topham. Our mission at Top Music is to empower instrumental music and voice teachers to find and nurture their innate creativity so that they can teach lessons that are innovative, integrated, and inspiring, and that will have a positive, lifelong impact on their students. Join us each week as we interview teachers and creators from around the world and unpack fun and exciting ideas to maximize your teaching and studio business success. It's Tim Topham here and welcome back to the Topcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today we've got a very special episode. As you've probably noticed over the last couple of months, we have been proudly supported by Alfred Music Publishing. It's been wonderful to see the reemergence of new collections of amazing sheet music from Alfred just this year. And I'm delighted that the publishing team led by Davis Dora has been able to put these collections together and share them with the world. You're going to absolutely love them. And today we're going to hear from three of the composers, one for each of the three new collections that Alfred is releasing right now. First up, we've got a collection by the amazing Connor Chee called Sand Paintings. Let's take a listen. Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to that excerpt from Connor Chee's new collection of sheet music called Sand Paintings. In a moment, I'm going to introduce you to Connor. We're going to have a quick chat about the collection, but let me tell you a little bit about him if you're unfamiliar. Connor is a renowned Navajo composer and pianist celebrated for his evocative blend of classical music with traditional Navajo elements. His compositions often draw inspiration from his cultural heritage, seamlessly weaving together Navajo melodies and classical piano techniques. A recipient of multiple awards, Connor's work has been featured in prestigious concert halls and festivals across the globe. His albums, praised for their emotional depth and technical mastery, showcase his unique ability to tell stories through music. Beyond his performances and recordings, Connor is dedicated to music education and cultural preservation, sharing his knowledge and passion with the next generation of musicians. Well, welcome to the show, Connor Chee. It's so great to meet you.
Well, it's my pleasure.
So you've got a new collection with Alfred, which is called Sand Paintings, and I've been watching Joel Schoenhall's play through while following the music, and I can say these pieces are really stunning. So tell me about the background to the collection.
Thank you. It was a collaboration. Joel Schoenhall actually commissioned me to write these pieces. He was interested in music that was about basically the healing nature of music in Navajo or Diné culture. And so that's what drew me to sand paintings, because traditionally our sand paintings are used for healing. And so I thought it would be interesting to create a set of pieces that sort of musically explored the visual elements of sand paintings.
Fantastic. And I'm picturing a sand painting being a painting in the sand on the ground. Can you tell me a little bit about how they're used traditionally or how that works?
So traditionally, it would actually only be used for ceremonial purposes. And that's, something that wouldn't be shared outside of the ceremony. And you do create with different colored sands, actual depictions, pictures that would be collected at the end of the ceremony. But now we actually have sand paintings that are displayed just like works of art. So you can actually purchase sand paintings and hang them on the wall. And they have elements that are outside of the ceremonial purpose, which is what I've really based my music on, so that it's, appropriate to be shared and celebrates, the underpinnings of the sand painting art, while also having sort of a musical expression.
And I guess a sand painting in the traditional sense would be it wouldn't last very long, wouldn't be something that you could keep. Would that be right?
Yeah, in their original form, at the end of the ceremony, they were collected, the sand was collected and it was gone, which is another reason I sort of was drawn to this idea, because that's kind of how we experience music. It's only while we're actually performing or doing the ceremony or the ritual, that we get to experience music.
You've created 16 of these works. Is there a significance to that number?
Well, the number 4 is very prominent in Diné culture because we have 4 sacred mountains based on the 4 directions, 4 sacred stones, and a lot of our traditional songs comes in sets of 4. So I created this with that in mind, that it's basically 4 sets of 4 pieces.
And can you help me? You've used the word Dinet a couple of times. Dinet, I think, is the spelling. Is that the traditional word for Navajo? Help me understand.
Dine with the accent, Diné. And that is what we call ourselves, Diné. So,
Okay.
yeah, it means the same thing as Navajo, but it's in our language, we say Diné.
Okay, I understand. That's great. So I've got a couple of musical questions because I'm quite interested in musical theory and I love the construction of music and chords and harmony and things. And I noticed there's lots of fourths and fifths. And I wondered if that's related somehow to traditional native instruments that sort of seeped into your personal style. Can you help me understand that a little bit? Have I got that right, by the way?
Originally, Diné or Navajo music doesn't have harmony in it. And so when I was first starting this journey of composing based on sort of these elements from Navajo culture and music, I sort of had to create my own idea of what harmony would be. And so I based it on fourths or the inversion, the fifth, again, paying respect to the sacred nature of the number 4. So that was actually where that came from. But, also a lot of native music does use pentatonic, not exclusively, but uses pentatonic collections. And so
yeah, that's what I noticed as well.
It also lends itself. Yeah.
It's great. And it's got that sort of there's an open feel to it, open range kind of feel. I'm not sure if that was intentional, but I think that comes from the sort of fourths and fifths harmony. I also noticed lots of changing meter as well. There was a sense, and I guess the composition, I was trying to kind of work out the structure of them as well. In a sense, they seemed somewhat freely composed or through composed, I guess we might use that term. Would that be how you look at these as well? Or have I sort of judged how they are structured?
Yeah, well, the changing time signature really, from the traditional standpoint, it's sort of, the meter just sort of fits whatever the musical phrase is. So it's not like we start with 4/4 time and then we keep that.
And everything's stuck to it, yeah.
Yeah, it's much more fluid. And so when I'm creating these musical phrases and it feels like they need a couple extra beats, that's where that comes from. And form for these pieces, and a lot of what I write goes again back to the number 4 of how many repetitions of the theme. And music is sort of developed differently traditionally in Diné music, where the repetitions are sort of the development, and there might be some fragmentation and recombining of these little pieces of the musical language or the phrases. And so that is a little bit different than what I think we're used to in a lot of other types of music. So in that sense, it sort of is through composed with a little bit of changes here and there, but mostly wanting to repeat those phrases 4 times.
I understand. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I really hope teachers explore these because it's just so great to get a completely different soundscape and share that with our students. So I love that you've created these and are sharing them with us. I think it's great. So were there any early life experiences or people that inspired you to explore your Navajo heritage through piano music?
I didn't really start combining my piano world with my heritage until after I finished my studies in college. That was my first earliest musical influence, was my grandfather singing traditional songs, but it didn't really occur to me to sort of blend these two things together until afterwards, when I was sort of looking for ways to preserve elements of the culture and some of the traditional songs that could get lost because they're all passed down orally. And so that was something that was sort of in the back of my mind for a while, but it didn't really come to fruition until after I'd finished my studies.
And was there a catalyst for making you go, all right, I want to actually explore this and get that out there?
I originally started just by recording some of the songs that my grandfather would sing and kind of trying to learn them myself. Actually, no, I didn't do anything with the piano at first. I sort of was making these recordings and then thinking really what was the end goal here? And if it was to share the music, that wasn't exactly, to keep it alive. That's when I brought the piano into it, because, one of the reasons that it's an oral tradition is it really is the idea that the music's alive. And So me adding my own sort of voice through my instrument, the piano, which is not a traditional Navajo instrument, but it's something that I, love very much and spent a lot of time studying. So that was sort of my way of taking this living music and, creating it and sharing it through my own voice.
I may sound a little bit ignorant. What are some of the traditional melodic kind of instruments that these works would have been played with? Or because obviously you sung, obviously there's percussion elements. What are the melodic ones?
For the Navajo tribe, it largely is just vocal and percussive, whether it's a drum or rattles or sometimes even just inverting a basket and using that to sort of keep time. It was interesting when I was working with my grandfather and recording some of the songs that he would sing. He actually couldn't do it without his drum. There was one occasion he came and he forgot his drum, and so I actually had to use a MIDI controller so that he could basically play the drum, because otherwise he really couldn't sing the music. It was an interesting thing how those were very, sort of couldn't be separated from each other.
Yeah, and you get a sense of that in your music too. Of course, there's lots of variety in the different pieces you've composed, but you can hear that sense of the percussion and the drum and the steady beat, and it's just magic. I've really enjoyed it. So you've been very involved in bringing more diversity to the piano repertoire as a composer and a presenter, and you're also a member of the MTNA DEI committee, I'm pretty sure. So what progress has been made, and what does the publication of these pieces mean for that mission, do you think?
I think, something really great that's happened is that the music that's already out there that is coming from diverse composers is really getting recognized now and started to be included in competitions and started to be included in lesson books. And I think that I'm really grateful for this opportunity to work with Alfred, because one challenge I think for teachers is getting a hold of the music. Not all the music that's been written and recorded and is out there, you can't always easily access the scores. And so I think that's a big challenge that hopefully we're able to overcome, in the coming years. And this is, for me, something I'm very grateful to be able to have this accessible to students and teachers and performers all over.
It's been wonderful to see the emergence of this as just an awareness, particularly amongst teachers. There's discussion about it now. There's real thoughts about some of the works that have been released in the past and how they're presented now and all those kinds of things, I think. And it's also great to see the discussions happening at conferences. And I think you present at MTNA this year, I think?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Yes. So it's just, I think it's just magic. And I'm so glad that Alfred's gone ahead and decided to publish these. It's going to be magical to share with teachers. So just the last couple of questions, because we don't have too much time. What kind of level would you say these pieces are suitable for the teachers listening?
These pieces range from late intermediate to early advanced. There's a little bit of a variety in there, and some things, sometimes it's hard for me to gauge my own music, because I've noticed that things that seem easy for me can be difficult for others, and the opposite is also true, where they might think it's simple, and for me, that's what I struggle with. So, but I think in general, that's sort of where they sit level-wise.
And how would you like teachers to explore and use this collection in their studios?
One of my goals with music is sort of creating a conversation that goes even further than the music. So having a discussion about some of these elements that influence the music with students, delving into what sand paintings are and their significance and their meaning. I think that is a really important aspect for me. And I hope that, these pieces will open that door for that conversation.
I guess it's about more than just, okay, let's buy this book and let's learn the music. It's more about, why is this book here? What does it mean? What's the significance? Let's use this opportunity to actually dive in with our students and learn something about the culture involved. Would that be kind of what you would love to see?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting because we already do that when we're studying Mozart or Bach. We learn about the context and the history and the performance practices. And I really hope that, teachers already are doing that for all of the music. And I hope that can be the same with these pieces as well.
Fantastic. Well, Connor, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing your music. And I really hope teachers dive in and enjoy it themselves too.
Well, thank you so much.
Well, I hope you enjoyed learning more about Connor and his amazing music. Definitely go and check out that collection. All right, we're on to our next collection. And this one is from Angela Marshall. Let's have a listen. Well, the next composer we're going to be introduced to is Angela Marshall and her new collection called Take the Stage. Now, this is a great collection for students. And as you'll hear, this is all about making music that really shows off students' talents for their stage performances. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Angela, she has built a multifaceted career as a composer, author, and educator. She has published a range of works, including educational piano solos, instructional method books, and numerous novels written under the name A.G. Marshall. Angela's extensive teaching experience spans online and in-person instruction at private studios, universities, public schools, and charter schools, where she has taught piano, composition, and voice. She holds a Master of Education with an emphasis on piano pedagogy from the University of Oklahoma. And when she's not teaching or writing, Angela enjoys dancing and traveling the world. Welcome to the show, Angela Marshall. It's so great to meet you.
Thank you so much. It is wonderful to be here.
Now, I've heard that you do lots of different things. You're not just a composer or just a piano teacher. You actually are a writer as well. So I wondered whether you could almost give us a bit of a week in the life of Angela Marshall, a sense of what kind of things do you do day to day?
Yeah, that has varied a lot over the years and varies even over the months. I have 11 novels published and some short story collections. So I do a lot.
Huge. 11 published novels.
11, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So
okay.
I used to be more of a piano teacher who also wrote novels. It transitioned over the years to where I'm an author who also teaches piano. And now I'm getting back more into composing after kind of a hiatus there. So now I'm a composer who also writes and teaches. So it kind of fluctuates, but day to day, typically I'll do creative work in the morning, whatever that is. And then in the afternoon, once kids are out of school, I'll teach into the afternoons and evenings. And then during the summers, I love to take breaks and travel, gather inspiration, kind of recharge my brain, and then do a big creative project, which this summer was Take the Stage.
Oh, great. I was going to say, yes, what were you up to this summer? But of course, you Take the Stage,
yeah.
which is what we're going to talk
10
about.
10 new pieces, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And are you still writing novels?
I am, yeah. So my current series is called The Fairy Tale Adventures. It's retellings of popular fairy tales. I am working on the last novel in the series, which is taking me a little while because I've got to go back and look at the previous 5 novels and make sure everything lines up. So it's in progress. It kind of was put on hold a little bit for this book, but it is coming.
And what audience is that for? Do you write for a particular age category or anything like that?
The official publisher designation would be young adult. It tends to be a little lighter, fairly clean, but I have tons of adult readers, male and female readers. If you like fairy tales or adventure, I personally love to go on adventures. So my books, the characters are always going on adventures, if that's your sort of thing. I write as A.G. Marshall. It was getting confusing to have Angela Marshall author and Angela Marshall composer all on the same page.
Okay. So if people want to look up your work, I assume it's on Amazon, etc. A.G.
Yes,
Marshall.
Yeah. A.G. Marshall.
Okay. And those first 10 books or so, the ones that you've previously, do they tend to be a particular style, a sort of a fiction or sort of comedy or thriller, or what are they?
Yeah. So yeah, it's a lot of them have a lot of romantic elements, although it's very clean. A lot of adventure, fantasy, magic. You're fighting monsters. You're saving the kingdom. Humor is a big thing. I have a lot of inside jokes. There's a recurring theme of seagulls, like jokes about seagulls, to the point where it happened completely by accident. So I made seagull stickers and I'll like pass them out to readers who know.
I think there's, I can see a new future music collection, something about seagulls or seabirds.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. You can have fun with that.
Well, before we get into the new collection, tell me a little bit more about your musical background now. Were your kind of lessons quite fun and creative or a bit more traditional?
As a student, coming up elementary school, high school, I was a very traditional student with very traditional teachers. We were doing classical. I was doing kind of the standard competition and festivals. I was doing creative things elsewhere. I was doing theater. I was writing plays. I do video work, photography, sewing. But I didn't have a role model for how to integrate those things with piano. This was pre-YouTube. Had no idea, like, oh, we can do piano and these things. And so it was kind of a gradual discovery process. And my professors in college, especially, just anytime I came up with something, were just very generous and willing to let me try it. So I would play a recital and have outfit changes and costumes. I would be showing film. And then in my studio, once I was in charge, it just ballooned from there. So I've played a recital dressed as a T-Rex in one of those inflatable costumes. It was the Jurassic Park theme, of course.
Of course. I like it. And
let me say, it is hard to play with your arms like in that little
like
suit.
little T-Rex arms. I get the sense now that you've told me that about this collection that I've been playing through recently. This is a truly creative endeavor. There is, for teachers listening, you've got to get your hands on this. There are, clusters and pedaling creating spooky sounds. There's fun stuff like blast off glissandos, the whole piano range, hand crossings, you use whole tone scales, you have added percussion, you have audience participation. Like this is truly all encompassing creativity. I absolutely love it. So tell us, how did you come to create this collection and make it so, why is it like this?
Oh, yeah. So this is, and I'll mention it's early elementary. I don't think we've mentioned that yet. So I wanted to take all the things that I love to do in a recital, all the things I love to do to make it fun, the things I've been doing with my students, because, I haven't been publishing music for a while. I've been writing music for my students the whole time I've been teaching, and say, okay, what if we condense this? What if we make the beginners the stars? What if they get to be the rock stars? They get to be the talk of the recital, the one everyone walks out saying, wow, did you see this? And so it was, how do we take that and take all these elements? I was going to say how long I've been teaching, but I don't want to do math right now. A while, I was like, how long have I been teaching? But taking all these ideas, so the collection itself is quite condensed. This is, a decade plus of me finding things that work and trying things in recitals. And now I've taken them all and put them all into one book.
I love that idea of showcasing the beginners, because so often the beginners are stuck with the simple teacher duets, and they can be fun, or a backing track if you've got one. But these really are kind of showstoppers, and will be so much fun for students. And they really are recital pieces, aren't they? That's the goal. The name is Take the Stage.
Yeah. So the goal was always, these performance, whatever a performance looks like. It could be video. Maybe it's someone is posting to YouTube, or the traditional recital hall. Right now, I have a very small studio. We have recitals in my home, just in my living room. So, but whatever the venue, I want them to be the stars.
Alfred Music's piano resources have long been favourites of piano teachers and students alike, with a vast catalogue of popular methods, supplemental repertoire, masterworks, pop and more. This fall, Alfred Music is excited to continue its legacy of producing first-class piano resources with the release of 4 brand new books. For video game-loving students, Saga Land, video game-inspired solos by Elizabeth Swift for intermediate students that is sure to spark the imagination and excite all of your students. Sand paintings, 16 piano pieces by the amazing Connor Chee, inspired by traditional Navajo sand paintings. Take the Stage, recital showstoppers for young beginners by Angela Marshall, and Rare Recital Treasures, an anthology of lesser-known teaching pieces selected and edited by Ingrid Clarfield and Kevin Chance. Exclusively for Topcast listeners, go to alfred.com/podcast and use the code TOPMUSIC at checkout to save 30% on these titles and everything else at alfred.com. Go check it out. And I get the feel that you like creating music that tells stories, which, now that I say it out loud, of course makes sense because you're a writer. So this idea of narrative music and evocative titles, is that something that's been important to you in your composition?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I also studied film scoring for a while. And actually, so I went to graduate school for piano pedagogy, but I was also accepted into film school and had to make this terrible, difficult choice of, which do I pursue? And in the end, after visiting both campuses, I just resonated more with the music teaching community, but I still love to create and tell stories, whatever the medium. And so some of these pieces, in fact, quite a few of these pieces, I approached as if I were scoring a film. And I thought, what's the setting? In some cases, it was a story. In some cases, it was a place I've traveled to. I wrote what I would write for the film score, and then I reduced it down to an early elementary piano level. So it's kind of arrangement of my own work. Yeah, it's been a process.
Yeah, it's like I often give presentations, and I find that giving an hour-long presentation is actually easier in some ways than a 20-minute or a 15-minute one.
For sure, those lightning talks.
Yeah, you've got to be so careful and switched on. And it's the same when you simplify something, but still have to make it sound great and be enjoyable to play and to teach. And you certainly have done that. I was thinking as you were talking about the film music, you've got a piece in there, Scottish Highlands or something.
Yeah, the Scottish Castle. Yeah. Yes.
And I love that. I thought, that really resonated with me. I thought that was.
Yeah, I took a trip to Scotland in 2019, and I visited castles. I love castles. Writing fairy tale fantasy. Of course, I love castles. But I also, at one point, hiked up. I'm not sure if it's technically a mountain. It's at least a large hill outside of Edinburgh. And I hiked up it with some friends, and it's foggy and misty. It's kind of by the coast. And then in the distance, we hear bagpipes. It's like the most Scottish thing in the world.
That would have been magic.
And so, so literal magic. And so I'm calling back to that moment in the opening measures of this piece.
Because the teacher part is the drone of the bagpipe, I think.
It's very bomb.
Yeah,
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Really lovely, beautifully written too.
Inspired by this magical hike and random bagpipe player off in the distance. He'll never know, but he got written into a piece of music.
You mentioned those duets as well. I love playing duets with my students. I think it is something that we should all do as much as possible. It not only makes things more fun, it gives the students that sense of, okay, I've got to keep in time. Did you enjoy playing duets as a student? And have you continued to include that in your teaching?
I'm struggling to remember a time I ever played a duet as a younger student. My teachers were not, I know we never performed duets. I did, however, love playing duets with my friends. I had several close friends who played piano, one who played violin, and so we would play together. But I still will do like jam sessions. I was at a jazz jam session last weekend. So while I didn't like come up in it, but that almost makes it feel more special to me to play that kind of ensemble music. And I love playing duets with my students. It's such as you said, you get the rhythm, because piano can kind of fall into the solo trap of like, I can do whatever I want because I'm not accountable.
Right. Yes. Yeah, exactly. I wonder too, in this collection, I know it's like choosing a favorite child, but did you have a bit of a favorite or one or two that you really enjoy?
Oh gosh, all of them really. Let's see. Yeah, let's see. Musically, Haunted Waltz was so fun to write, mostly because I love waltzes. I do a lot of dance as well, and so I always want to waltz in there. Just from a experimentation standpoint, Beethoven's Ghost was so fun to figure out, how do we do these cluster chords? It was a bit more complicated, and the cluster chords were more notated. And then as we were editing, I've got to give a shout out to Davis Dora, who's been the editor on this project, because he's been so good. And so we simplified. How do we keep the spirit of Beethoven's Ghost with it being accessible, and finally got there. And I'm so pleased with the final result. And I've not seen anything quite like it before at this level.
No, it is quite unique, I have to say. Yeah. And I love in the performance notes or somewhere I read, you can play the clusters, do you want to do it with your fist or with your elbow? Or like, you just have lots of opportunity in this for teachers to give their students lots of choice and try different things and work out what's the best way to do this. And I think that's great.
Yeah, that's very much by design. I give a lot of suggestions, but I also just want people to open up their creativity. Yeah.
So do you have any composer inspirations apart from the bagpiper? dead or alive?
Apart from the mystery, hopefully we'll say the bagpiper's still alive. My classical favorites are Chopin and Debussy. Those are two composers
Debussy
I love to
definitely
play.
comes through.
Gosh. Yes, yeah. There's one very specific inspiration. The Elephant Adventure is my take on Jimbo's Lullaby, which I've played in recitals before. And I love the idea of you can be quite low on the piano, but it doesn't have to be aggressive. So that was part of it. Beethoven's Ghost is really inspired by George Crumb. Anyone familiar with his Macrocosmos can probably pick up the reference because it's quite
Yeah,
literal.
I knew his name, but I'm not familiar with it.
He does a lot of extended technique, a lot of prepared piano, which, we're not preparing a piano for an elementary student just yet. But another one is Joe Hisaishi. He's a Japanese film composer. So Bamboo in the Rain is very much like my take on his harmonies. And that one's also inspired by a trip to Japan. So just a lot of Japanese influence in that one. And then Moonrace was inspired by Journey. If you listen to the chord progression, you can probably figure out which song.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna dig into that one and try and work it out. All right, don't tell us.
I'll let people guess. Yeah, I'll let people guess.
Let people can grab the music and try and work it out. So, wrapping things up, I know unfortunately we don't have all that much time to share today. How would you like teachers to use this in their studios? What would you like to see happen with it?
Yeah, so first of all, I've said it, I'll say it again. I want to make beginners the stars. I want to give them a chance to shine and also a chance to show off their hard work. Just those first few months, first year or so of lessons, there's so much new, right? You're working so hard, and I really want to give them a reward. One way that I've used some of these pieces in my studio, kind of backup plan, is if you have a slightly more advanced student and they've really got an ambitious recital piece, and it's kind of 50-50 on whether they'll actually have it ready or not, these can be really good backup pieces because they're still really fun to study. They're still going to look really cool on stage. It's not obvious like, oh, this was the fallback. But then even if the student never knows this was your intention, you as a teacher have that little bit of insurance of like, okay, we're being ambitious, but if we don't get there, then we'll be all right. And then, the third goal is just to let the teachers and students unlock their creativity. I would be thrilled if I see a video someday or someone comes up and tells me someday that they did something completely different with this collection, like, oh, you said this, but I did this. That would make me so happy. So if you're the kind of person who feels like you need permission, like, here's your permission.
Composer
Take
says,
the collection, run with it, make it your own. Composer gives the okay.
That's great. So you would love to see YouTube clips of students just doing wildly creative things based on what you've provided.
Would absolutely love it.
That's magic. Music to my ears, literally. That is so good, Angela. Well, look, I commend this to teachers listening. Go and check it out. And Angela, congratulations. I know how much work goes into collections like this. Davis, I'm sure you're listening. You've done an incredible job as well. And I really hope that we can see more Angela Marshall coming out in the future.
I hope so too. This has been so fun. I've had fun. So I think there'll be more coming out.
Great. That Seagull collection, remember. Now, where can people find out more about you, Angela?
Yes, I am on Facebook and Instagram as Angela Marshall Music. I am on, for my novels, it's author A.G. Marshall. My website for, again, having two personalities previously is tricky. For the novels, angelagmarshall.com. For if you want more of my music, I have other like arrangements and things, avanellpublishing.com. That's AVANEELL publishing.com.
Fantastic. Great. We'll put all those links in our show notes as well. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's been wonderful to hang out with you.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been fantastic.
On to our final composer of this trio, Elizabeth Swift, and her new collection called Saga Land. Let's take a listen to one of the pieces now. You've been listening to one of the pieces in the new collection by Elizabeth Swift. Elizabeth is a composer and piano teacher based in Greater Cincinnati, Ohio. While rooted in classical training, Elizabeth integrates a variety of musical styles in her compositions, fostering a rich and eclectic musical experience for a diverse range of students. Elizabeth studied piano performance and music education at the University of Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music. In addition to composing, she is passionate about teaching her students to improvise and interpret music in a way that reflects their unique creativity and individuality. Drawing inspiration from her adventures in travel and camping alongside her husband, 4 children and 2 dogs, Elizabeth infuses her teaching and composing with a sense of adventure and exploration. It's exactly what you get in this new collection called Saga Land. Welcome to the show, Elizabeth. So great to see you.
How are you?
I'm very good. And I absolutely loved playing through your new collection, which we're going to be talking about in a moment. But before that, I wanted to get a sense of what you're actually up to. Are you mainly composing, teaching? Could you give us maybe a little week in the life of a brief overview?
Sure. I actually teach piano about 5 to 6 hours every day. So I think that ends up taking the bulk of my time, and I love it. So I don't really want it any other way. And then as far as my composing, I also love that, although it feeds me in a very different way. But that can vary a lot. Like I might have a week where I've only composed a few hours, or I could have a week where I am literally every spare moment working on the composition, either editing or just like, I tend to get a little bit caught up and projects take over my brain because I'm so excited and so passionate about them. And so I just have to be writing when that's going on. And I love that stage. That is my favorite state to be in.
And that's the state you've been in, I would guess, for the last couple of months as we come to releasing this new collection, yeah? It's hard. It's super hard work, isn't it? Because you've done all this work, the compositions are out there, but then you go through the editing process. And for people who haven't been through that, that is quite a process normally. And a great process because you learn lots in the process. Everybody puts their opinions in and you have to make decisions about which way you go. So, I also know that process and have enjoyed it in the past. Tell me, I'm interested to know about your own musical lessons briefly as well. Were they quite traditional, or did you have a fairly creative teacher that sort of maybe put these creative compositionally ideas in your brain at an early stage?
Actually, I had a few different types of teachers growing up, but I have a background that is decidedly classical, very classically trained. And I was not interested in creating or improvising or playing by ear or figuring out how to use chords. And I just wasn't interested. I liked reading music. I was completely fine with music that other people had written and learning it. And I was a pretty decent sight reader. So I think that contributed to me just finding it more efficient to just read music. So it was a little bit later in life, honestly, that I realized I didn't need music. And I started creating my own.
Yeah, well, tell me about how long you've actually been doing the composing for. When did it kick off?
I started composing around 2017.
Okay. Oh, so it's pretty recent, really.
Pretty recent, yeah. And I just have been publishing my own music up until recently, which is a really exciting transition for me. What happened was I had volunteered to play keyboard on my church's worship team, and I had just planned to be playing chords. But then I realized that I didn't just have to play the chords, and stuff was just like pouring out of my brain that I didn't know was in there. And so that's when it all started. And I did take composition in college. You know, I was a music major, piano performance and music ed. So we did a lot of composing in school. But this type of composing that I'm doing now just feels much more creative and natural. And it's coming from improvising. So that's a bit different than what I had learned in conservatory training.
So your new collection with Alfred, which we're talking about today, is called Saga Land, which is an unusual name, I think. What was the goal for you in putting this collection together?
Well, first I wanted to capture the feeling of escapism that goes along with playing a video game. I wanted to create something for students that would draw them in and let them get immersed in the story and then transported to a different world, like video games do. I also wanted to provide teens who maybe aren't those students jumping headfirst into classical music, something they were excited to open up and get to each day. So I tried to create music that is beautiful and interesting, but not overly complicated, with only a couple of technical aspects per piece. So you know how hard it is to get a teen's attention when they're trying to beat a level in their game, or if they've just made it to a new world. I kind of wanted to have that same draw for our students through Saga Land.
Yeah, and it really, as soon as I started playing through it, I got that sense of, okay, this sounds modern. It feels current. It's going to be 100% engaging for students because the sounds are there. They're used to this. It's got that film cinematic kind of sound. The titles are really evocative. Like Storming the Gate, I thought, it's got really fun rhythms and pop chord sounds in it. And I also liked that while it is modern sounding, it wasn't always predictable. Some composers and pop music, obviously very predictable, very repetitive. Yours went some weird, like not weird, bad, weird, good, unusual places. As I was playing through, I'm like, oh, I wouldn't have gone there, but that works really well. And I also like that you've got a mix of styles and time signatures too, because sometimes we can also, when it comes to more modern music, stick to that 4/4 and it's all quite repetitive. Tell me about just a couple of the pieces, perhaps maybe what you were kind of thinking of as you created them, because I also got the sense perhaps that some of them flowed on from one to another. Like you could almost like get a sense of these are all part of a sequence.
Well, and I think that comes from the fact that I do kind of imagine a story. And I haven't really like come out and said, here is the story, because I really do want students to feel like they can come up with that on their own. And there's not like any right way or wrong way to interpret the pieces. But definitely in coming up with the titles, I had something in mind that was the action for that piece, or maybe the challenge, or, some kind of storyline. So then it does kind of make sense that as you play it, it just feels a little bit natural to keep going to the next thing. But when I compose, I almost always start with the title or an image. So when I did that with Saga Land, it was just, I was very comfortable with that. But I definitely was, it's a world that you're trying to get into. There has to be a villain. There has to be some scary stuff. There has to be some battles. Then there's mystery, and then there's just lightheartedness, So I was just kind of picturing different characters and things happening to these characters along the way. But I'm kind of obsessed with getting students to play expressively. That's as a general rule in my studio, and then also through my compositions. That's really one of my big goals, is to make meaningful music so that it's easy for students to connect and then play them expressively. So then when I come up with the titles, the tempo descriptions, the rhythms, the harmonies, all of that, I feel like is just trying to get students to play expressively and musically.
I know a lot of teachers, and myself included, I've tended to gloss over titles sometimes. I don't think it's even possible with this one because they are so evocative and creative. But would you suggest teachers just because there's a few ways you could go. You could play the music without showing them the title and see what they imagine with listening to the music, or you could say, here's the title. What do you think you're going to hear in this piece about that title? How do you approach it?
My favorite thing to do is to just kind of talk about the title, get students brainstorming what kind of options this might hold for us, and then we sight read. And we decide, okay, what option that we presented and thought of, does this fit best? Do we like that option? Do we want to change that option? And in fact, one of the things that I love to do with Saga Land, because I think with the harmonies and the patterns that I have, it's very easy to do this. You change it. So we can get really creative. And let's just say Fortress in the Clouds, which is an A minor. It has a lot of open chords, open fifths. And you can kind of imagine that it's actually a major chord. And then when you get to the third, go ahead and make it the C sharp, And then how does that change the title?
Yeah, that's so much fun. That it's such an easy way to get kids thinking and imagining and being creative and curious. It's like, what will happen if we do that? How would that change things? I think that's great. And it's wonderful to hear a composer say, pull my music apart, explore it. Yes. And you know what? I'm pretty positive that Bach, Beethoven, all of those guys would have said exactly the same thing.
I agree. I try to tell my students, this is just how they played it that day. That's just what they liked that day. We have no idea what they did the next day.
That's right. Well, we know that lots of them never played their pieces exactly the same. Chopin, I think I'm right in saying, was just improvising all the time.
Constantly. He was never done editing, it seems like.
So what kind of level are these pieces suitable for, Elizabeth?
So they are, if you were to look at like, say, like a sheet music plus kind of leveling, level 2 and 3, so like an early intermediate, and then they go into more of like a lower intermediate, so like a level 4 maybe. So some of the pieces are going to be easy to grab hold of, for instance, like Fortress in the Clouds, the first piece in the book. It's very accessible. And I think because we only have a few challenges in each piece, if students are motivated, even at that early intermediate level, they're going to be able to play the whole book.
So I know this is like choosing your favorite child or something, but do you have a favorite piece? I've got a couple. What's yours?
I think I love Forest Canopy. Okay, so it is the one that just has a nice rolling left hand pattern, and the right hand, even though it's kind of matching a lot of the rhythms in the left hand, it has surprising twists and turns, and it's fun to juxtapose that with just almost like a repeating left hand, because you just don't know where it's going to go. And then the timing of the phrases in that piece also is a little surprising, where the phrases don't resolve when you think they're going to. It's actually suspended and resolves in the next phrase. So, and it's just like lush and creamy, and I love it. So Forest Canopy, yes.
Lush and creamy.
I would have played it, but I tried out my piano, and it was very out of tune today. And I thought, it's not going to sound very good on
That's all right. I found it really hard to choose as well. I thought climbing the ladder is going to be a huge win for tweens and teens for sure. They're going to absolutely love that one, I know. Song, which had that lovely embedded melody above that rippling movement. Sorry, River Song, yeah. And I really loved Luna's Peak as well. I thought that was really evocative too. I mean, it is a great connection.
I have to tell you about Luna's Peak just really quick, because I do have students just imagining what these pieces are about. And when I tell them Luna is my dog, they're a little surprised.
Oh, okay. I'm picturing some magical sorceress or something.
So Luna's Peak. Okay, so it was inspired by my little antisocial Australian Shepherd. Now, when I say Australian Shepherd to you, Tim, this feels a little awkward because she's very, very American. I think they've actually renamed that breed to American Shepherd. But anyway.
Well, we don't have Australian Shepherd. We have German Shepherds.
You have German Shepherds, and we have Australian Shepherds. Do you have just Shepherds?
No. I've never heard of an Australian Shepherd.
Okay, maybe you need to start looking for an American Shepherd, and then you'll see. So she's antisocial, and I just picture her up at the top of this icy mountain peak. Okay, she's on a cushy throne that is her dog bed, and people can admire her, and she can look down and see what everyone is doing in the land below, but no one can reach her because she's at the top of this slippery, icy mountain. And so there she remains, almost in power, but not really, because she won't interact with anybody. So that's what inspired it. But, we don't have to tell our students that. We can let them come up with their own.
Love it. Okay, that's cool. So I was going to ask you about composer inspirations as well. Can I guess a couple?
Okay. This is not good for me, but yes.
Yuruma? Maybe River Flows in You kind of style. I got a bit of that.
Yes.
Ludovico Einaudi?
Yes.
Okay. All right. 2 for 2. That's not too bad. Who else? Who have I missed then?
So what I love about those two composers is they are cinematic, but what I want to try not to do is to become repetitive in any way. So I like to always have little surprises infused in there.
Yeah,
and
that's
challenges.
a big difference.
Honestly,
yeah.
I think that we can kind of patronize our teens sometimes by giving them this repetitive music that just kind of fades into the background. And this is not that.
Yeah, and Ludovico Einaudi can be like, I love his music, but it can get quite repetitive. And a lot of the minimalists, I guess, Philip Glass and Max Richter, et cetera, as well. What about older composers? Like, do you have any?
Maybe kind of strange, but I love Mozart because he just kind of took normal and threw it out the window, but in a lighthearted way. Like, I just didn't think he cared. He wasn't trying. So I really respect that, and I love his music.
I remember the first time one of my teachers, when I was actually at that kind of level of learning or trying to learn, I could not get into Mozart. I really tried with one of his sonatas, and she eventually said, "Tim, this is not working. You need to play some Beethoven." And then I was hooked on Beethoven. But I remember she told me to go and read his letters, and, he was just quite obnoxious and rude and crass and all of this. And we think he's all like beautiful and pretty music, but the guy, which it was, but the guy, like he was a
handful.
joker. Yeah. Really fun to look into.
I love it.
Anyway, look, one more question, because we've only got a short amount of time. How would you like teachers to use this collection in their studios?
Well, I think the beauty of this book actually is in that you can use it so many different ways. Because I think if you handed this book to your student and did nothing else, they're going to open it and they're going to play it at home, you know, and they're going to enjoy it and look forward to opening it every day. But I also think it's a fun, like, starting point for a whole studio project. And I've actually had, this Alfred Saga Land is the new improved Saga Land.
Yes, because you'd previously self-published.
Yes, before Davis Duro got involved, and like, oh my gosh, that human is amazing. He has done so much with this book. So he, you know, obviously coming down to the details, he was super, super helpful. But we actually changed some things and really made it better for students. It's more accessible. And anyway, my point there was, I've had a teacher take this book and do something that I had kind of suggested in the cover, which is turn it into a studio project. You have your students playing their selection. They come up with sort of a plot or a storyline for their piece, and then they create a video. So the students would have the video kind of playing in the background, and they would either narrate their story or type their story into their video. So they made up the storyline. And then in the background, you hear them playing their pieces. And so it came together in like a nice little virtual recital. And I just think things like that, where they bring the students together, they're creative and they're meaningful and memorable, are kind of what I want for Saga Land.
What a fantastic aspirational goal for teachers listening. Go and grab this collection, try it out with students. I know, look, they're going to love the music. I've got no hesitation in recommending that. But to then pull some pieces apart or to make a creative recital with video and stuff, I think that's just so good to hear. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for putting this collection together, because it's going to be a really great resource for teachers. And congratulations for finishing it, because I know it's been a big job.
It was big. And like you said, the editing is just as big as the creating itself. So much editing. And so I'm really, really proud of this book.
It is. Well, it's been great to reconnect with you. Thanks again. Well, how much fun was that to explore? I just was so delighted to be able to meet these three incredible composers who have been working so hard in the background, put these collections together for us. Thank you to Alfred for supporting the podcast, and I encourage all of you to go and explore these new collections over on the Alfred website or indeed at your local retailers. Next week on the show, the tables are turned. Nicola actually interviews me in a fireside chat from a live event, and I'd love to share that with you. Coming up next week. Until then, I'm Tim Topham, and you've been listening to the Topcast. Can't wait to speak to you again next week. How do you keep up to date with all the latest trends and research into music education? How do you connect with other teachers around the world and make sure your teaching stays fresh and relevant for students of all ages and stages, both now and into the future? I created our Top Music Pro membership to be the one-stop shop for music teaching resources, training, support, and community, and I'd love for you to come and join us inside. With over 40 comprehensive training courses, hundreds of teaching demonstrations and lesson plans, free monthly sheet music, discounts, and all the business and pedagogy support you could ever need, Top Music Pro is the community you've been looking for. If you're ready to level up your learning from the podcast and join thousands of other teachers in our global network, head over to topmusicpro.com today. If you enjoy this show and want to hear more of our work, be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening today. For links and resources mentioned in this episode, visit us at topmusic.co/podcast or check out the show notes. I'm Tim Topham. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy your week ahead, and I'll catch you next time.